Too much ballin', too much hustling, too much swag, too much ignorance, you shouldn't even brag. Too much biting rappers must be mad. Misguiding the youth, you rappers are sad. Too much ballin', too much hustling, too much swag. From Superman to man, all y'all can go to hell. All the supervillains call Man of Steel Kal-El. If you still miss it, you're dumber than I thought, fam. Dumber than Dumb and Dumber. Can't stand a rapping handyman, Mike Candyman. When rapping spit 3 whack lines, suddenly the booth is full of flies. I'm white, blacks want a European great hope. Sammy Sosa vibes, cartel that use cake soap. Eminem rap Jesus was sent to save, but got you popping e-pills like Sean P. at a rave. Mine's been lost, you're not losing it. MC powers, rappers abuse it and use it to keep the people locked down without cell blocks. Mentally keep the people locked down with don't think blocks. Until you think for yourself, you'll never be free. Chasing your favorite rapper, that's far from MC, far from hip-hop. Put down the telescope, Moorish, Rock, M, and BDI, I ain't no joke. Far from hip-hop, put down the telescope.
Peace and love, hotel. The presentation today is called Islamism and the Rise and Return of the Moorish Empire. And the lecture is going to be presented by National Grantee Dawiyd Ali-Il. The National Grantee is these are the Moors that put us onto the information. So we wouldn't be doing what we're doing if it wasn't for this brother right here, right? So I'm gonna open up the floor to you more, and I'm gonna put it on mute right now, and you can do your thing.
Okay.
You're live.
Okay. Islam family. First I give in all honor and praise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sustainer of all the boundless universes, to his illustrious prophet, Noble Drali, who came in these days and times to teach the Moors to be themselves. When the Moors have fell into the graves of Negro, black, colored, Ethiopian, African American, or any of the other names that the pale skins nations of Europe choose to place upon the Moors, we know these are very simply misnomers. And these are not the names or titles that belong to the Moors. Islam?
Islam.
I rise giving honor to our flag, the Moorish flag, the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center representing the 5 highest principles that are known to man. Islam? To the American banner, trade of amity and commerce. This banner is a divine reminder to the Moors. The European nations owe us, and they owe the Moors in compound interest. Islam? I'd like to acknowledge first the love thought of Allah made manifest, the illustrious prophet Noble Drali. But I do not want to forget to acknowledge the prophet Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who was like John the Baptist, that voice crying out in the wilderness. Okay, this is a very, very important person in the history of the Moorish movement and the history of Asiatics in North America, because the work that these two men did is undeniably the most powerful work that's been done in our time, without a doubt of contradiction. I want to read something from our Holy Quran, Circle 7, divinely prepared by our prophet, Noble Drali. The end of time and the fulfilling of the prophecies. The last prophet in these days is Noble Drali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways, and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days, to warn and stir up the nations, and prepare them to receive the divine creed which was to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner that was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare themselves to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Drali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of men, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and return to their own, and be one with their Father God Allah. The Moorish Science Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization, and subordinate temples that desire to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa that there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of men. under love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. We as a clean and a pure nation descending from the inhabitants of Africa do not desire to amalgamate or to marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations, as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. The covenant of the great God Allah: honor thy father and thy mother, that thy day may be long upon the earthland, which the Lord thy God Allah hath given thee. Come all ye Asiatics of North America, and hear the truth about your nationality and your birthrights. Because you are not Negroes, learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We are trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourselves with the families of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets. By the order of the Prophet Noble Drawley. Islam. Okay, family, so let's delve into this. First of all, we have to understand what it is that the Moorish Science Temple of America is, and let's refer to the Moorish literature, okay? We have to understand that there's a twofold purpose for the Moorish Science Temple of America. One purpose is that the Moorish Science Temple of America has civic obligations to our people. Secondly, we also have religious obligations to our people, okay? Which we actually collapse the two things. A lot of people don't understand that the Catholic Church is a religion, but although the Catholic Church itself is a religion, it's also a nationality. The European nations around the time of the what they call the Saracens, the Crusades, they went to war with the Saracens, which is just an alias name for Moors. And I want to show you something too, that what they do historically is attempt to hide the truth about who we really are. Just give me a second. I'm going to reach into my little stash and pull a book out. I want to show the Moors.
That's the kind of stash you mean.
That's the real stuff.
You know what I'm saying?
Call the stash anyway.
Sounds like it.
How many people are familiar with a book written by Stanley Lane Poole? Raise your hand if you're familiar with the book.
What book is it?
It's called The Muslims in Spain by Stanley Lane Poole.
I heard of Stanley Lane Poole, but not that book.
Okay, now let me tell you something. This book is written, or actually was republished by an Islamic book company in the Americas called Iqra.
Oh, the Muslims in Spain?
Yeah. Actually, Goodwin Books, out of New Delhi, which is in India, right? But what's interesting, or Pakistan, what's interesting is that this is not the name of the book. The name of the book is The Moors in Spain. If you go amongst any of the Islamic groups in the Americas, you'll find them refer to themselves as African Americans, while the Pakistanians will refer to them as Pakistanians, the Afghanistanians will refer to themselves as Afghanistanians, the Iranians from Iran, everyone is aware, and then they call us African Americans, but yet an Islamic book publishing company would hide the fact of who we really are and change the cover and the name of the book from the Moors in Spain to the Muslims in Spain. And the whole book is about the Moors, but that name Moor is a mystical word. That word is much older than Islam, it's much older than Judaism, it's much older than Christianity. This is a word that goes back to the ancient Egyptian language. There were three languages that were used amongst them: the Maoric, the Demotic, and then the Hieratic. All right, they refer to as the hieroglyphs. And one of the words for priest in their language was Moor, M-A-U-R. So this word is a word that comes from antiquity. It's not a word that was used amongst the English. Some people believe that this is a word that people use, and it's just a misnomer. But this is actually the proper name for our people. Okay, and we can't allow other people to define for us who we are. The most powerful tool in our hands is the power of definition. Okay, so I wanted to get that out of the way and show that there's a across the board conspiracy to withhold the information about who the Moors are. Okay.
A quick question.
Yes.
When you're speaking about them changing the names, like instead of putting putting Muslim, Saracen, Berber, etc.
Yeah.
Could you speak briefly on that being a process of denationalization?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Give me a second. I got so much stuff for y'all. I don't know if we'll be able to get it all in.
Don't worry, we can do part 2. Don't worry.
How many people are familiar with a book called Oppenheim's International Law? If you're not, raise your hand.
No.
Okay, you used to be able to download it offline for free, but now it vanished. But inside of it, they talk about the process of nationalization versus naturalization versus birth. Okay, let me explain. And actually, I'm quoting from Grand Sheikh Amir Ranisi Heru Ranisi Il. He's the Grand Governor out of Atlantis. This is a book called What Shall We Call Him? Okay? It's a very good book. Actually, what I did was in one of my classes, I talked to Heru about Oppenheim's International Law, and the next thing I know, he printed it in a book, which is so important. So he made my life easy. I don't have to pull out the big, huge Oppenheim's International Law. According to international law by L. Oppenheim, on page 352, there are 5 ways to acquire a nationality. These are birth, naturalization, reintegration, subjugation, and cession. The 2 methods concerning so-called African Americans are naturalization and subjugation. Mr. Oppenheim says regarding naturalization, through naturalization a person who is a foreigner by birth acquires the nationality of the nationalizing states. Now let me stop. There's a group of Moors, I won't say their names, out of Baltimore. And they have a philosophy that has absolutely nothing to do with what Noble Drew taught, because he taught nationality. Noble Drew said that nationality is the order of the day. But they have a conversation called naturalization. They even charge money to naturalize a Moor. If I naturalize something, I'm making something that of which it wasn't. I'm making something that at one time was unnatural natural. That is an unreality because we've never been not who we are. Noble Drew said this, I'm going to quote him word for word. Chapter 47. According to all true and divine records of human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nations from the Holy Land of Canaan. What your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt of contradiction. So there is no real need to naturalize a Moor, because a Moor is already a Moor, regardless of Even the terms Negro, Black, and Colored, though we use those are misnomers. Our people are only using those names because they don't know better. And when you know better, you do better. But our people had no knowledge of who they were, so they allowed their enemies to define who they were, you know? Malcolm talked about that. Today is in honor of El Haj Malik El Shabazz. He talked about allowing our enemies to educate us. And he said that only a fool would allow his enemies to educate his babies, you know? It makes absolutely no sense for us to believe that a man or group of people who wouldn't treat us right would teach us right. That makes absolutely no sense. We, unfortunately, are the victims of ancient, historical, religious, and spiritual editing. Around 1863 to 1865, there was a rewriting of history under mandate from the Queen of England to actually rewrite history, to change history, to take things and erase them. At one time, we were the free white persons. At one time, we were the white man. All of that got switched around, and we got called the black man, the bleached man. We got called the Negro, the black, the colored. Well, that has never been the case. That has never been the case. We have never, ever been confused about who we were. We've been tricked, but we never, the Moors historically have always known who we are. I'm going to quote something from some Moors in 1790. This is the Journal of the House of Representatives in 1789 to 1790. Can you see it?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
The views of the slaves and free blacks are rarely found in petitions. Blacks were often subjects of petitions submitted by whites, but in one unusual case, 4 former slaves petitioned the House for a clarification of their legal status. The ex-slaves, Francis, Daniel, Hammond, and Samuel, had been subjects of the Emperor of Morocco when they were captured by an African king. They were delivered to a Captain Clark on the promise that he would take them to England, where the Moroccan ambassador would ransom them. But instead, they were sold in South Carolina as slaves. Eventually, the 4 men purchased their own and their wives' freedom. They now wanted to be assured that if accused of a crime, that they would be tried as subjects of a foreign nation by the Court of General Sessions, rather than as free blacks by magistrates and freeholder courts. The House decided that men were citizens of Morocco, thus not subject to the laws that govern free blacks. How many people are familiar with this?
Sundry feet.
Good. This is a very, very important document. This document is from the Sundry Free Moors in South Carolina. But there's even more and more records to discuss and prove who we, the Moors, are without doubt or contradiction. Regardless of who other people have labeled us as, we've always been that. And what Noble Drew Ali was, he was the return of and the continuity of an ancient Moroccan empire that existed. Now, what I want is there a Black's Law Dictionary in the house there? 4th edition?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I want someone to open it up and turn to, are there more than one in the room?
Yeah.
Is it up?
Okay, good. I want somebody to turn to kingdom, and I want somebody to turn to empire, and look those 2 words up.
You have 5th edition up there too?
I'm sorry?
Hold on. We got it.
You got
Okay.
one out there too? We're good one.
Over there. It should be on the next side. By the desk.
Kingdom?
Yeah.
I can't see though. You want to turn the lights?
Kingdom and what?
One second.
You want to turn the lights?
On the light, are you okay?
You can light it. I can't see.
On the light?
He needs light.
What are the 2 names? What are the 2 words?
Kingdom and empire? And I got empire.
Yeah, read. I want you to read kingdom, and then read empire.
All right, empire. The dominion or jurisdiction of an emperor. The region over which the dominion of an emperor extends. Imperial power, supreme dominion, sovereign command. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, page 617.
Okay, now read kingdom.
Okay, like a kingdom.
Yeah, yeah.
A kingdom where an officer called a king exercises the power of government, whether the name be absolute or limited. In some kingdoms, the executive officer may be a woman who is called a queen.
Okay. Now, what I want you to understand is that an empire has kingdoms inside it. Okay? So when Noble Dawiyd returning the Moorish Empire, it had various kingdoms. So in essence, what he set up was an emirate. An emirate is a dominion that's established by emirs, who are princes or rulers of various provinces, but are governed by, in Arabic, a person who would be called a sultan. Okay? So Noble Dawiyd, knowing who he was, knowing full well who the Moors are, knowing what our vast estate is, because in our Holy Quran, Circle 7, it says, behold, I have risen from the dead with gifts for men. I bring to you the title to your vast estates. Now, Noble Dawiyd was a prophet, but he was an adept and a mystic as well. So when he was really in the process of returning the Moorish Empire and building the Moorish Empire up, he used code words. The Circle 7 is a coded text. It's in plain English, yes, but it's a coded text for those who understand, who are adepts, those who are mystics really can delve inside of the words and understand that this wasn't necessarily our brother Justice talking, Yeshua, or Isa talking. This was Noble Dawiyd speaking about what he personally had returned to the Moors. Because in 1929, after he had come back, and I'm going to talk about what that empire is, because I'm going to show you a document called the Convention of Private and International Law, called the Bustamante Code. Okay? Now this was a meeting that was held in Havana, Cuba, February 20th, 1928. Can you see it?
Yeah, we got it.
You got it?
It's a little blurry, but
Okay.
we got it.
Okay. And at this meeting, he went to represent the ancient Moroccan Empire. I want to show you something in chapter 47. Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family was second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means a demarcation line of dominion of Amexem. The first true and divine name of Africa. So Amexem is the first true and divine name of Africa. What they did was, Moors, they took the AME of Amexem and the RICA from Africa and created a land called America. Okay? The word Amir itself, that they call the America, the word Amir means a prince or ruler. All right? This land anciently was known by different names. It was known as the Land of Frogs. It was known as Turtle Island. It was known as Amexem. It was called Utla at one time, which means vacation spot. It was called various things by the Moors, and it was like a getaway for the Moors. We wanted to escape, and come to tranquility. This is where we would come. Okay. There's a proven fact. If you go to Ivan Van Sertima's book, it's called They Came Before Columbus. In the book They Came Before Columbus, Ivan Van Sertima talks about how a group of students actually built a boat out of papyrus, which is paper, Moors, and sold from West Africa to the northwestern shores of the Americas. Now, what's interesting is that was done by a man by the name of Abu Bakari, who was a brother of Kankan Mansa Musa. So the Malian Moors are actually the original inhabitants of the people who actually sailed here long before any Native Americans. The Native Americans that they refer to as Native Americans are actually a mixture of the Hoshin dynasty or the Shang dynasty and the Malian Moors or the Olmecs, which will take it back even further. The Olmecs, when the Olmecs came to establish something here, they brought with them rubber. And a lot of them came from as far as Uganda. And what you got to remember is that when the Olmecs were actually on the landmass, Moors, they walked on the landmass when the land was still connected at one time, which the Greeks referred to as Pangaea. The Prophet Noble Drali referred to that as Atlantis. I'm going to get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Okay. The dominion of Kush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was the father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them, the Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permissions from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire. If I make a statement like, I am presently a Grand Sheikh, I'm not talking about the past. I'm talking about something that's in the present. Noble Drali was talking about an establishment of an empire today, not an establishment of an empire of yesterday, not a sultan of yesterday, but he is the present sultan. Noble Drali is our sultan. Y'all with me?
Islam.
The dominion inhabitants extended from northeast and southwest Africa across the great Atlantis, even also the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands before the earthquake which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. So now, and I haven't forgotten we were talking about denationalization, but all this ties in, believe it or not. I say all that to say, we are descendants of an empire that's so great and powerful that they attempted to bury the truth about what Noble Drali was teaching from inside the movement and from outside of the movement. Y'all follow me?
Yeah, we got you, Islam.
If all of the ways that I described earlier to reinvest us of what we were divested of is the ultimate goal of Moorish Science Temple of America. Okay? So if we were at one time Moors and got labeled Negro, Black, Colored, Ethiopian, African American, or any of these other names, we have to understand that we have to go back to that which came before it. That's why he said, proclaim your nationality. But in actuality, in the original printing of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws, it doesn't say proclaim your nationality. It says preclaim your nationality. Preclaim is a distinct word from proclaim. Preclaim means that I go back and claim that which was before. Okay? So that means that the empire of old is the empire of today. And all we have to do is work to reinvigorate it, to breathe life into it again so it can become exactly what it was meant to be. Act 6 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. They may know that they are part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians. Now let's add a point of clarity here. When it says the said government, the said means the before mentioned. The only before mentioned government inside of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws is the Moorish government, the government of Act 1. Act 1 says the Grand Sheikh and chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America, right? It talks about that. The Grand Sheik and Chairman, the Assistant Grand Sheik, the Grand Body, those are the actual governing bodies of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Okay? You with me? You still with me?
Islam.
Okay. The Moorish Science Temple of America in actuality is a theocratic monarchy. Now, what do I mean by that? It's a constitutional theocratic monarchy, so it has three faces. We have a divine constitution and bylaws that governs us. We're also governed by the symbols that are on our charter, the sigils. The sigils are actually powerful. The charter is powerful, but the actual charter and the verbiage is actually subordinate to the sigils. So the sigils mean symbols that are on the charter. The actual 10 houses that are on the charter. Okay? Those 10 houses have symbolic meaning. The adepts understand what those things mean. And on the actual charter, there's verbiage that talks about extending the learning beyond even where the Prophet Noble Drew Ali took us. Even extending it beyond where Noble Drew Ali brought us. Because there's no movement ever in history that can move without moving. All movements are moving. All right? There's nothing that can happen without motion. So we can't be exactly where we were in 1928 or 1929 or even in 1916 with the inception of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Okay? With us, all members must proclaim their nationality. We're teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. They may know that they are part and a parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folks, black people, or Ethiopians. Because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live in the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are descendants of the ancient Moabites, who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Islam? So, it's really clear that Noble Drew Ali said these names were given to slaves by slaveholders. But the Moors, we were never slaves. We were taken into bondage or taken into captivity and then divested of something. Now that's going to lead me back into what we were asking about the process of denationalization. Okay? Mr. Oppenheim states, more interestingly on page 290 in international law, although subjugation is the original mode of acquisition, since the sovereignty of the new acquirer is not derived from that of the former owner state. The new owner is nevertheless the successor of the former state. I'm going to read that again. That was powerful. Mr. Oppenheim states, most interestingly, on page 290, in international law, although subjugation is the original mode of acquisition, since the sovereignty of the new acquirer is not derived from that of the former owner state, the new owner is nevertheless the successor of the former state. Thus, the present U.S. federal government, situated in the 10 square miles of the District of Columbia, and extends jurisdiction over those subject to its jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is merely the successor of the dominion of the Moorish Empire. Said successorship was through military occupation and annexation, not through voluntary appointment. What does this mean? What this means is that we were forced to give up our nationality. It wasn't something that we voluntarily gave away. It wasn't something that we agreed on. Because what you have to understand about contracts, there are three things that make up a contract, Moors. An offer, reasonable consideration, and acceptance. Offer, reasonable consideration, and acceptance. There was never an offer. There was never reasonable consideration, and we never accepted. So there is no contractual agreement between us and any other European powers who may act as government who may not be government. Y'all follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. There are 7 modes of losing one's nationality. These are release, deprivation, long continued immigration, option, naturalization abroad, subjugation, and cession. The modes relative to the so-called African Americans are subjugation and cession. What does that mean?
Cujo, could you ask me to repeat those again, please?
Could you repeat those again, Brother Dawiyd?
Mm-hmm. There are 7 modes of losing one's nationality. These are release, deprivation, long continued immigration, option, naturalization abroad, subjugation, and cession. What we have to understand, though, is that we aren't foreigners in our land. This is our own homeland. We didn't come from anywhere else. If we are Africans, and the prophet never said that there wasn't wisdom to be learned from Africa. The prophet said that there's still much wisdom to be learned from the descendants of Africa. So acknowledge that the word Africa exists. So the Moors can't act like that word doesn't exist. But we have to know who we are in the grand scheme of things. Africa is a continent. And again, it's a word that's not even of English origin or even a ancient African language. It's not Yoruba, it's not Hausa, it's not Fulani. You know, it's not any of the ancient names, it's not Edo, it's not any of the ancient names of our people. It's a word actually of Arabic origin. It comes from the Arabic word ifriqiya, which means to divide something, to separate something, to break up something, which is understandable when you know about something called the Berlin Conference. How many people are familiar with the Berlin Conference?
Yep.
If you're familiar, raise your hand.
1860.
Okay, the Berlin Conference is a conference where the European powers who existed all over European nations actually began to stake claim to African nation states, to move into those states and divide them up. And then they started to begin to call those nation states by the name of the natural resource that empowered it. So if they were in the Gold Coast in Ghana, where the Ashanti mines are, or amongst the Kumasi or the other people there in West Africa, they called that the Gold Coast. Then they went to Cote d'Ivoire, they called that the Ivory Coast. You know, wherever, I'm sure that in their own minds they call South Africa or Zambia the Diamond Coast, okay? And that's where you find all of these men, the Goldsteins and the Silversteins and the Rubysteins, because these men were the actual robbers of the gold and silver from our land. That's the actual secret, Moors. In the United States of America, in the Utah that's here, they have, under the Carter administration, a memorandum that talked about the actual unity between our people who live on the continent of Africa and us here. That relationship never actually made a marriage. They never intended for us to marry our brothers and sisters on the continent, because they understand the immense wealth on the continent of Africa. If any of you are familiar with a brother from Martinique by the name of Walter Rodney, he wrote a book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. How many people are familiar with that book?
No.
All right, if you are not, you need to make sure you get a copy of that book for your library. It's called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Okay, it's one of my favorite books. Actually, unfortunately, Walter Rodney, who wrote the book, walked out to his car in Martinique and started it up, and it exploded for some reason or another. But his conversation about what the continent of Africa could do for us is very powerful and potent. Okay, so I want that to be in the speaking. Okay, y'all still with me?
Yep.
Yes, sir, Islam.
Okay, good. So back to how we got rid of our nationality, and we're going to find out why. Because they want us to, if you have an inheritance, and what our Father has for us, there's really no one who can take it away. They can stall it, but they can't take it away. If it's our destiny, it's nothing that anyone on earth can do to stop us from our divine destiny, because we have a divine destiny. But there are also earthly destinies, but there's a divine destiny. And our divine destiny is that we rule again. That no longer we are the tail, but moreover we will be the head again. All right? That's about the rise of the Moorish Empire. All right? So what is subjugation? Subjugation is simply defined as conquest. Conquest is the taking by force of an enemy's possession in a time of war. A conquering state formally annexes its enemy's territory. Technically, the subdued or conquered state ceases to exist. You follow me, Morris? That's from James Reedy's Oppenheimer International. Okay, very powerful.
Sorry about
Because
that.
inside of that, what they did with these names, through subjugation, one acquires the nationality of the conqueror state. So we no longer were being referred to by our national names, or our free national name, which is Moorish American. We became known as Negro, Black, Colored, Ethiopian, African American, and all the other misnomer names. Puerto Ricans, Latinos, Mexicans, these are all misnomer names. Okay? Trinidadian, Martinican, any false name that they can come up with. Okay, those are all what we refer to as nom de guerres, war names. Okay? Conquest is the state of the territory and people after the subjugation. Under Pope Nicholas V, I believe it was, is when the true subjugation of the Moors actually started. Okay? This is when he gave permission to find the Saracens wherever we were and vanquish us. That's his actual language. However, when the conquered state agrees to give up their land and be ruled by the conquering force, this is an act of cession. Cession is like you having an inheritance, but you walk away from it because, you know what, I don't really want to deal with that. It's like being the son, because we're like, imagine us being the sons of Bill Gates and walking away from the fortune of the Gates family, you know, just because. Our wealth, Moors, is in our land. Our wealth is in our culture. Our wealth is in our spirituality. Our wealth is in our health. Our wealth is in the return to the rulership again, as in the olden times. Okay? Cession is the relinquishing of property rights, especially when a state is defeated in war. So we gave up what was our landmass, because originally the entire landmass, where we're standing right now, everything from Canaanland, where you are, all the way down to Argentina, Peru, all of that was the land of the Moors. All of that is Moorish proper. Okay, and then all the way over from there to the land of Florida, the land of flowers, all the way back over to the Khalifa states that we refer to as California. All of that is the land of the Moors. And all of that was actually taken away from us. It wasn't given because we walked away from the tables. Why would we walk away from the fortune of the Gates family? That's ridiculous. So cession is not a reality. Okay? It's not a reality. Cession is the relinquishing of property rights, especially when a state is defeated in war. Conquer people's land and property of the conquered. The process of annexation is a formal process in international law, which usually consists of removing the enemy's flag. How many people, and I know everybody in the room, is familiar with the story of George Washington chopping down the cherry tree? I know everybody is. Well, the story talks about George Washington's father coming to him and asking him about this cherry tree that got chopped down, and he denied doing it. And the story says he actually hid the axe behind his back and said, well, I cannot tell a lie, I chopped down the cherry tree. Well, in actuality, the cherry tree has nothing to do with an actual cherry tree, but it has something to do with the Moorish flag. Okay? The Moorish flag, it says in the 102s, which is actually older than the 101s, says that the Moorish flag is over 50,000 years old. Okay? This is written by our brother Henry Ranisi Hill as well. Moorish questionnaire for the Moorish Americans and the 101s and the 102s. Okay? This is coming out of Atlantis. It's being published by Alhambra Publications. our flag. It is 50,000 years old. Now, what is that saying? If the flag, and it flown in this land, is older than 50,000 years, that must mean that the people that live in the land who actually made the flag are older than 50,000 years. I mean, it's really simple mathematics. The flag didn't precede the people preceded the flag. So that means that we are the actual original inhabitants of this landmass. If the flag flown on these shores over 50,000 years, we've been here over 50,000 years, making us the aboriginal and indigenous persons here. Okay? Now, people ask me all the time why I use the word aboriginal. The word ab, if you look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, it says ab, a word of Syriac origin, which means the father. So we're saying we're the father of the original. We're the original fathers. Okay? That's why I use that term. All right?
Oh, is that more? What do you say about people saying don't use aboriginal because it means abhor? Abhor the original.
Yeah, I understand what the word ab usually means against something, but in this sense, the word has a different etymological root than to mean against the original. Okay? There are other words that we can use in place of it, but the word really means we're the father original. It really that's the actual meaning of the word. Okay? There's a form of annexation called the cherry stem annexation, in reference to the shape of the territory annexed. This is an interesting point of law, especially when there exists a story in European American history wherein George Washington is claimed to have said, "Father, I cannot tell a lie, I chopped down the cherry tree." The cherry tree is in reference to the European colonists chopping down the Moorish cherry red flag with a 5-pointed green star in the center. Okay? Subjugation is directly related to war. There was a war against the Moors. What you have to understand is that there's been an everlasting war for over 50,000 years that didn't end until 1812, starting the end, and didn't officially end until 1912, when the flag fell last in Battle Creek, Michigan, with Tecumseh Bay. But the actual original fall started around 1492. But it took that long. Our empire was that vast and powerful that it took from 1492 until around 1863, 1865, all the way up until there were still remnants, all the way up until 1912, when the Moorish flag itself actually stopped flying in Morocco. And actually, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is the first person to pick that flag back up and raise that flag again in 1913. That flag that you see flying in the UN, that some Moors say is not the Moorish flag, that's not true. That flag was picked up by the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. That's the only flag that we've ever seen him fly. That flag is the flag that he raised again. The Moors of Morocco stopped actually flying that flag. They ceased to be a nation of Moors and became a nation of Moroccans. Okay? And they put up a new flag. But it had nothing to do with who we were as Moors. And I understand that in Noble Drew Ali says in the 101s that we are the descendants of Moroccans, which is a reality. But what I mean is that the actual red flag with the 5-pointed green star ceased to fly there, and the Prophet Noble Drew Ali flew it here. Okay? After the Moors fell, the empire of the Moors fell in 1492, there was another empire that began to rule around that time called the Turkish Empire, the Uthmanis, also referred to as the Ottomans. But there was a secret society amongst those Moors called the Sacred Turks, or the Mystic Turks, who were able to actually carry the secrets of the Moors all the way up until today, which is why you find in a book written by G.M. James, who they also assassinated, they killed him masonically. They cut him from ear to ear, which is actually the dew guard of the Ancient Apprentice Mason, and tore out his tongue. What they did was he revealed the true secrets of Freemasonry's origin, how it came from the ancient Egyptian mystery systems, and how he says in his writing that the Moors are the descendants of the ancient, the priests of ancient Egypt transferred their rule, power, and esoteric teachings to the Moors at the fall of the ancient Egyptian system. The Moors were the continuity of that system. Are there any questions?
Questions? Not yet.
No questions?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No questions?
No, there's no questions yet.
Okay, we're gonna keep moving. The reason why we're talking about how we were denationalized is because the only way to get back to being a nation again and an empire again and being kingdoms again is to trace our way back. Have you ever heard your mom say, when you lose something, just retrace your steps? How many people have heard that saying before?
Oh, yeah.
Well, spiritually, historically, we have to actually retrace our steps to find that which was lost. That's the whole thing that's dealt with in Freemasonry. Freemasonry talks about finding that which was lost. Well, that which was lost and that which was buried in the northeast corner, the place where there's barely any light, was the Moorish nationality. The Moorish man and woman was buried in a shallow grave. And it wasn't until Noble Drew Ali began to kick over those tombstones of Negro, black, and colored that we were able to see again. So that's why we're talking about. This is how you raise the nation again. You raise the nation again by proclaiming who we are and then organizing ourselves. See, that's why for people who say that there's no need for the Moorish Science Temple of America, that's ridiculous. The Moorish Science Temple of America is an embassy. Just like the Catholic Church has its archdiocese. They have one here in Mecca, Chicago. They got them all over the world. They have archdioceses that are all ruled by the Holy See. Okay? I want you to look up something. Look up the word see in Black's Law Dictionary.
Oh, yeah.
See, S-E-E.
Holy See.
All right, Mark. C.
Okay. All right, read.
The circuit of a bishop's jurisdiction,
Yes.
or his office or dignity, as being bishop of a given diocese.
Okay, keep reading.
That's all it has there.
Okay, now, number one, let's understand that the Pope is the Bishop of Rome. How many people knew that? The Pope is the Bishop of Rome. So the Holy See itself it's not even that big, Morris. It may be 4 blocks, if anything, but it dictates to the whole world. Why does it dictate to the whole world? There were very Indo-Germanic European nations. It was the French, the Anglos, the Saxons, the Franks. All of these people did not agree with each other. They hated each other. But they hated the Saracens even more. So what they did was a man named Charlemagne actually was able to unite them and say, well, we will put aside our differences. And we'll get behind one person. We'll call him the Vicar of God, the head of all Christendom. And we'll support him. He's the bishop of the Holy See, which is actually the Holy Roman Empire. Okay? The Holy Roman Empire has tentacles that extend all over the earth. Okay? These are the same people that supported the Nazis in Germany, the extermination of the Jews there. Okay? These are the same people who blessed weapons before soldiers went into war and plotted and killed hundreds of thousands of people. These same popes, okay? These same people. We've been at war with these same people for thousands and thousands of years, okay? The Battle of Poitiers, the Battle of Tours, these famous battles that took place between the Moors and the European nations. What you have to understand, these battles happen because the European nations seek to subjugate us because they understand that property cannot own property. I'm going to say that again. Property cannot own property. So if they divest us of something and seize us and make us chattel property, then we can never own land. We become what they call a human. A human, according to Ballantyne's Law Dictionary, is a monster. Someone who's unable to own land, unable to have property. How many people are familiar with Valentine's? Valentine's Law Dictionary, 1930, human, a monster, a human being by birth, but in the same part resembling a lower animal. A monster has no inheritable blood and cannot be heir to any land. Valentine's Law Dictionary, 1930. How many people are familiar with that?
No.
That's bananas, Moors. Just think about that. There were 6 European Albion nations or tribes who sought to subjugate the Moors. The English, the French, the Dutch, the Irish, the Scottish, and the Germans. Okay? They're the ones who sought to divest the Moors of their birthright nationality and to subjugate them to the level of chattel slaves. Okay? The whole point was to take your land. The same thing that they're doing today in other nations, except they do it differently today. They bring in the World Bank today, and they loan you money, and then when you can't pay the interest, they come in and take your country over. They did it in Jamaica. They do it all over the place. Okay? They're using different methods today. You know, the game never changes. They may change the name, but the game remains the same. Okay? War is a contention between states with express or tacit implied intention of overpowering one another. States require their vast existence by waging war, but do so either to conquer or to fend off conquest. The general mode of subjugation, and we're talking about an empire, is that the conqueror destroys the military of the vanquished. How many people know that in 1945, America, the United States of America, dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Yes.
They totally destroyed Japan. They dropped an atomic bomb and killed millions of people, okay? After they killed millions of people and destroyed the Japanese army, Japan to this day still does not have a standing army. There's no navy for Japan. That's why America's in Okinawa. Japan has been subjugated. It has been subjugated, okay? The general mode of subjugation is that the conquest destroys the military of the vanquished. They destroyed the Moorish alma mater as well. They destroyed all of the Moorish fleets, all of our ships, and actually hid the fact that we even had one, and then began to call it by the misnomer name, the Spanish alma mater. When we know for a fact that the Europeans didn't even know how to sail. That's why I talked earlier about Abu Bakari, who sailed here, and the Malian Moors, the Idrisites, who actually came here, okay? They take possession of the enemy territory, formally annexing it, even though the enemy head of state and former vanquished government may still lay claim to the land. There are governments that exist in exile that always have, regardless to what the colonized have said. An example of that is South Africa, or Azania, which was his original name. You have the Boers and the British in South Africa who were occupying it, and there were just a few of them. There were millions of South Africans, but there were a few Boers and British who were able to keep their foot on the necks of the South Africans and form a system of slavery called apartheid that didn't end until recently. Slavery is an evil disease. Unfortunately, it's something that still exists in Mauritania. It still exists in a lot of Arab countries. In Saudi Arabia, they have a serious problem with slavery. Their slaves being held secretly in those nations, which is unjust. That's why the Prophet Noble Drawley taught us, think not with Arabia. Mr. Oppenheim states, most interestingly, on page 290. I'm sorry. I read that. I'm sorry. Pardon me, Morris. why do we have to come back to being Moors and give up the names Negro, Black, and Colored is because it gives us a level of statehood. We've been operating as stateless people. According to Oppenheim's in international law, an individual may be destitute of nationality knowing or unknowingly, intentionally or through no fault of his own. Even by birth, a person may be stateless. They understand that there are two ways, and I want you to look these two words up. One is jus sanguinis, J-U-S, sanguinis, and the other is jus soli. That's why it says in the UN document, everyone has a right to a nationality and they can't be arbitrarily taken away from them. Because the other nations understand nationhood, they understand statehood, they understand what it takes to be a state. Like, I want to share something with you. I'm not going to get to this today because it's a whole nother subject unto itself. And that's what it takes to be recognized as a nation. These are some of the things. What kind of recognition is there first? There's state recognition, government recognition, and diplomatic relations. State. Defined territory. So there has to be a defined territory, all right, for a state to be recognized. Do you think that we have a defined territory? Do we or do we not have a defined territory?
Yes.
We do.
We're in the land of home. It's not. We're in our homeland. We didn't come from anywhere else. A permanent population. That's why it's important for us to nationalize the Moors. Because when we do, now we have a plebiscite. We have the people. We have the permanent population. Okay? We have to have control of our own government. We have to centralize the power of our own government. Before the actual Jewish state or the state of Israel came into existence, there's a document by Theodore Herzl that's called Judaeum Statum that talks about the birth of the Jewish state, okay? And one of the things that they talk about in the document itself is the fact that they would operate as a government although they didn't have a physical territory that they lived in. They were all over the place. They were in Germany, they were in Poland, they were in Russia, they were all over the place, but they operated a organization called, I think it was called the Zionist Congress, the World Zionist Congress, that was a government unto itself while the state of Israel was not functioning, okay? The capacity to engage in formal relations with other nations. That means diplomatic relations. That means that we have to actually train diplomats, plenipotentiaries, and people to represent the Moors. Not as individuals. Because you got a lot of people who run ahead of the pack and attempt to go and talk to the other nations about things, when in actuality, we have to sit down at a round table, not a square table where there's a head, but a round table where we can begin to discuss. That's why Taj called it the Moorish Order of the Round Table. You know, the great elder Taj Sharif Grandchief. What we have to do is really begin to dialogue, because if we go to the UN as individuals, and there are things that, let's say, there may very well be something that Grand Sheikh Cujo knows, something that I don't know. He may have a missing piece that we need to take the Moors to the next level of the game. Okay? These are things that we have to do and discuss as a people. We can't have lone wolves and lone rangers who run out ahead of the pack, run out ahead of everyone else, and do things on their own. That causes confusion. And it breaks up the movement, and it makes us look bad, and it makes us look unorganized. So when you say we have to centralize our power and centralize the authority, that means that there has to be a time where we form again our Supreme Grand Council, where it's made up of those people who represent us. 7 men, Noble Drew Ali said, tried and true. All right? As well, we have to define what a state itself is, what a permanent state is. A permanent state is a territory. So what's a territory? These are things that have to be understood. What is de jure land? What is de facto land? These are things that have to be acknowledged. What is de jure law? What is de facto law? You know? It's so many things, Moors. To give you an example, look up the term, just to show you how the European knows what's real. How many people have ever heard of the term Barbary powers?
Yeah.
Okay. Barbary powers is a term that was used by the Europeans to describe the Moors. Barbar is it really is a word that, it means Berber, right? It's the proper way to say Berber, Barbar, okay? But they use the term to call the Moors barbarians, okay? Look up this word, Lex, 2 words, Lex Barbary, Lex Barbary. Look that word up. And then I want you, Cujo, to look up Mohammedan law.
All right.
All right, read Lex Barbary first. Lex is L-E-X.
Yeah. There's only Lex Barbara in there.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Lex Barbara, the barbarian law. The laws of those nations that were not subject to Roman Empire were so called.
Who is it that Noble Drawley taught us had their foot on our necks?
Roman.
The Roman nations. Who was it he said that crucified our brother Justice?
Romans.
Romans. I'm going to read from the 102s.
Well, before you go there, Mohammedan law.
Mohammedan law.
A system of native law prevailing among the Mohammedans in India and administered there by the British government.
Lex Barbary. Lex Barbary talks about the actual law that the Moors played by, the rules that the Moors played by. Okay? Lex Barbary was the law of anybody who was outside of what they call an outlaw, outside of Roman law. It is unwise for you as a Moor to go into any European court and take his law into court as opposed to take your law into court. It's even worse for us to go into a court, especially when we know that these are quasi and the fictitious courts. Okay? We're not going to deal with that today. That's a whole nother class. Okay? What I want to talk about next, though, is the fact that if the Mohammedan law and the Lex Barbary law are in Black's law dictionary, those are just definitions. But that means that there's a whole case study around those words that people know about that's not being discussed. Is that right or right?
Law.
Right. So these are some of the things that they intend to keep us in a state of what we call civility mortuus. Dead civilly, dead in the eyes of the law. Okay? And we're subject to everyone else's law. The only law that we're subject to is the law of God. Okay? Now that doesn't mean that we go and infringe on anyone else. That just means that we're wise about how we do things. Okay? Questions?
Yeah, one question is, we spoke about nationality and proclaiming our nationality. Now, there's new people here today. Here for the first time, a couple people here for maybe second, third time.
Okay.
The process of proclaiming nationality, is it bigger than cards and papers, or is cards and papers that gives you the nationality that we're trying to proclaim?
Good. if you go back to the definitions I gave you earlier that I didn't really get a chance to read those, was jus sanguinis and jus soli. Jus sanguinis means the right of birth. Jus soli means the right of soil. There are intrinsic rights that we have because we're here. Okay? When we're knowledgeable about who we are, but that has to be proclaimed. So when we document it with what we refer to as a declaration of nationality, we file that at the public level, so it becomes publicly known who we are. When we claim it in public with our nationality card, it's in the presence of Allah, in the presence of the Moorish who are come, that we've returned to the ways of our ancient foremothers and forefathers. So those things are very important, that we actually deal with the Declaration of Nationality by declaring it on paper. But it's even more important that we declare it with our knowledge. Because, knowledge is power when applied properly. Again, knowledge is potential power if not applied. Knowledge is power when properly applied. If we apply what we know and what we've learned, it empowers what we know even more. So it's not enough to just proclaim your nationality and you walk away from the table, but you never do your due diligence about who we are as the Moors, who we are as the Aboriginal indigenous persons here, when everyone else is discussing who we are. It's the secret conversation that's being discussed behind the doors in all the secret Rosicrucian temples, behind the doors of the Scottish Rite, behind the doors of the Knights Templar, the Knights of Hospitaller, and all of the other secret societies that exist. The conversation about the return of the Moors and the fact that this is 1159, and the Moors are returning into their own. That empire is waiting on us. It's like we're the children of, and I use this as just a metaphor, we're the children of Bill Gates, who found out that our last name is Gates. But in this instance, we found out that our father, Noble Drawley, we're his children. We're the Ills and Bays. And that we have an inheritance too. It's called Amexem, the ancient Amexem Empire, which goes back to why I discussed the Bustamante Code, okay? And what he was doing there. In force, November the 25th, 1928. It has all of the nations that were present. Uruguay, Panama, Ecuador, Mexico, Salvador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Venezuela, Colombia, Honduras, Costa Rica, Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Haiti, Dominican Republic, the United States, of which Charles Evans Hughes was present. How many heard the story of Charles Evans Hughes? When Noble Drew Ali and C. Kirkman Bey got off the boat, C. Kirkman Bey said something in Spanish to the soldiers about who Noble Drew Ali was, and the soldiers came to attention in front of Charles Hughes. And Charles Hughes looked at Noble Drew Ali and said, "That's a dangerous man." So what you have to understand is, if the Moors weren't there to be represented as an empire, all of these nations are nations. What was Noble Drew Ali doing at the meeting of the Convention of Private International Law called the Bustamante Code, of which the first articles is what a person is. Nationality and naturalization. Can y'all see that?
Push a little closer. All right.
Nationality. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get it right.
The other way.
My hand is shaky.
Yeah, right there.
Can you? Almost, hold on. All right? Nationality and naturalization. The next is domicile. These are the things they discussed. Domicile, chapter 2. So this goes to show that the Moorish Science Temple of America is not some religious organization exclusively. Just like the Catholic Church is not a religious organization exclusively. Okay? Individual persons, the second portion. And the actual second part to that is juristic persons. It goes on and on and on to describe different things that are important to nations. Okay, and America is one of the few nations that didn't sign it. They're the only person who was present at the meeting but didn't sign. Okay? Y'all still with me, Morris?
Islam.
I want to go on and show you a little something since I brought up the secret societies. For those of you who know me know that I actually myself was a member of Freemasonic Society until I became an adept in the Moorish Temple of America. I never hidden that reality that I was a Freemason at one time, a 32nd degree by that, actually, a sublime prince of the world's secret, and a Shriner. And one of the things that I learned while I was in there, and one of the many things, is that they don't tell us the truth. This is a Masonic Bible that was printed in, the newest printing was in 1984. The oldest printing was in 1941. Okay? Now, there's not much in here that's different from any other Bible, from Genesis to Revelations. There's a little tiny section about the history of Freemasonry, but it's nothing else, really. But I happened to be in a thrift store with a friend of mine about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I found this Bible. Now, this is a Masonic Bible, too. From Argos Lodge, 399 free acceptance. May 15, 1943. He was initiated. He was passed to a fellowcraft May 22nd, 1943, and raised as a Master Mason, 1943. What's interesting about this one that makes this Bible different from any other is once you get to the back, there's a section, and it says Egypt and the gods of Egypt. Can you see that?
Tell him push it closer.
Put a little closer.
Turn it.
All right.
It's too close.
Yeah.
It's good.
All right, we got it.
The following account of the gods of Egypt, well, you might want to mute it.
Yeah, I did.
The following account of the gods of Egypt will interest those who have taken higher degrees of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. The Egyptians believed in a hidden and unknown almighty God, but they also acknowledged the existence of a number of beings, supernatural nature. Now, why are they talking about ancient Egypt in here, and the gods of ancient Egypt, but they aren't talking about it in here? Because they've even dumbed down the Freemasons. First thing they talk about is Ptah, the god, the original creator god who grew himself from the primeval hill. Then they talk about Amen and Ra and Tahuti, Osiris, Sekhet, Hapi. Then they begin to talk about the Ark. Not only do they discuss that, but then they start talking about ancient Babylon and the Enuma Elish. That's the cuneiform script. Can you see it? All of that is in this little Masonic Bible I got in the thrift store for 50 cents. So do you think if they know about the gods of Egypt, and we know that Egypt happened over 10,000 years ago, that they know about the history of the Moors that happened in 711 when they begin to actually historically discuss their rule in Europe until 1492? I want the speaker on for that because I want to hear what people got to say.
Love.
So do you think if they can record stuff from ancient Egypt, that they have records as well about the history of the world?
Yes.
There was an old Public Enemy song, and the verse went like this. Power and equality, I'm out to get it. I know some of y'all ain't with it. This party started right in 66 with a cold black radical mix. Then they go on to talk about, in the same song, even Masons, they know it and refuse to show it. is proven in fact. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. So what you have to understand is that secretly the Masons have been hiding the secret of who the Moors are, not discussing who the Moors are, keeping it to their chest. Because these are the men who secretly have completely undermined what we've done. Because there were two men, and I've talked about them on many occasions, Horace Greeley and Albert Pike, who both understood, because at that time, during the time when they were around, they understood we weren't referred to as black at that time. And they weren't referred to as white. They were called petticoats. All right? We were the actual white men. We were the free white persons at that time. For those who are new in the room, can someone read the definition of free white person, please?
Coming. All right, free white persons. Free white persons referred to in the Naturalization Act as amended by Act July 14, 1870, has meaning naturally given to it when first used in First Statute 103C3, meaning all persons belonging to the European race then commonly counted as white and their descendants, including such descendants in other countries to which they have emigrated. It includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descents. It includes Magyars, Lapps, and Finns, and the Basques and Albanians. It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, and North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. It does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races, nor the...
Read that again.
It does
Read
not...
that again. I need a do-over.
It does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races, nor the mixed Indo-European, Dravidian, Semitic, and Mongolian peoples who inhabit Persia. A Syrian of Asiatic birth and descent will not be entitled to become a naturalized citizen of the United States as being a free white person.
How many people can hear something really interesting about a free white person, what a white man is or a white person is that you never heard before? How many people have ever seen the cover of the Golden Age of the Moors or a picture of a Moor, antiquity?
Yes.
If I may borrow this from Dr. Khalid Muhammad, the average Moor of antiquity was dark as 10,000 midnights. So if that's the case, how could we be referred to as free white persons? But in the definition it says the Moorish inhabitants of Spain. Go back and read that again, Cujo.
It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic, Iberian, and Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greek, Latin, Phoenician, and North
Stop.
African...
So wherever the Moors were, if we were in the Iberian Peninsula, if we were in Spain, if we were in Portugal, wherever we were, all of these people are considered free white persons. So how is it that we were subjugated? How many people have actually read the letter between the Emperor Sidi Muhammad and George Washington? Yes. In the letter, he calls him your magnanimousness, which means he understands he's above most people. He says that our land is poor. We are poor in gold and silver because they owe tribute. They owe gold to the actual Moors. The Moors were the ones who were instrumental. That's why the Moors have the longest running relationship of diplomatic power with the U.S. because of our relationship with them. We allowed our Spanish Armada, aka the Moorish fleet, to guard its shores from the British, which established a long-standing relationship. And there's a book about it called The Barbary Powers. Okay? I say all that to say they know now and they've always known that the Moorish Empire is around. But they've always suppressed it, oppressed it, subjugated it, annexed it, and attempted to keep it hidden. They didn't want you to know your name was Il or Bey, because the Il, Bey, Dey, Al, and Ali will tie you back to those treaties, will tie you back to the land, will tie you back to your ancient foremothers and forefathers. It's easy to call you Rashawn Beck or to call you Matthew Johnson or Larry Jackson, because if I call you Larry Jackson, you belong to Mr. Jack. You're Jack's son. You'll never stand up and be your own man. You'll never stand up and own property, because property doesn't own property. It's really simple. Okay? Questions?
Any questions?
Yes. In the definition of free white persons, I understand, overstand, and understand what you're saying, Grand Sheik. Though I've been questioned with the second half of that part, they're saying who is not free white persons. I understand it, but can you put it in terms maybe that we can learn on how to spread that message? Because it's not saying that these people are not Moors, but it's them recognizing that they're free white people. I don't know. Can you explain that?
Okay. Yes. I'll do it really quick. I use Noble Drawley. Key 93 of our 101 says, will you define the meaning of the word white? White means purity, white means God, and God means the ruler of the land. Whoever the free white man is the actual landlord. He's the actual ruler. He's the actual Khan. He's the actual person who's standing on the land that belongs to him. So they knew to call themselves white men, and actually that quote that the Sheikh, was that Adisa speaking?
Yes, sir. Yeah. There's more, sorry. There's more.
Yeah, it was.
Islam, Sheikh.
Islam, more.
Islam, brother man, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
The reason that's so is because if you get back to who you are, that's why I know it's really simple. Taught to not call the European white men.
Yeah.
Because if he calls them white men, you're saying that they're the landlord. He said call them Europeans, because that'll put him back in his homeland and talk about where he's from naturally, where he came from. It has nothing to do, and his story exists in the story of Romulus and Remus. It has nothing to do with reality. His story is based in mythology.
Right.
Our story is based on a historical continuation that we can look at. We are the original white men. So in that definition, free white person, it distinguishes who is and who is not. So anybody who would call themselves a Caucasian or by any other name like that is not necessarily a white person. Free white person is a status. There are 19 levels of citizenship, 19 levels of status, of which AA is the highest level. Okay?
Okay.
Next question.
Give thanks, Sheik.
Any more? More questions? All right, more. That might be the wrong too.
Yeah, there's a question.
Oh, there's one. There's a question coming.
Islam more. You mentioned earlier, by the way, Mario Bay.
Yes, Islam, Sheikh.
Islam. You mentioned earlier that we're a theocratic monarchy, correct?
Yes.
Well, does that make us emissaries and diplomats and ambassadors?
Good question. Those who are members of the Moorish Science Temple of America have something called okay, let me explain first. There are two different kinds of sovereignty. Write this down, Moors. external and internal. Inside of external sovereignty, there are two different kinds of sovereignties. One called semi-sovereignty and one called full sovereignty. Semi-sovereignty legally is referred to as clipped sovereignty. So all of the people are not sovereigns. That's a misnomer.
Yes.
Sovereignty, when we use it, we mean freedom. All of the people are not sovereigns. In actuality, the grand sheiks represent true sovereignty and extend sovereignty to the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America through our prophet, who is a sovereign. Our charter, it says, if you look up the definition of the word charter in Black's Law Dictionary, it says something emanating from a sovereign. So the members who are sheiks and grand sheiks and governors are plenipotentiaries, diplomats, and representatives of the Moorish government. Okay?
Okay, well, so
Our people have semi-sovereignty or clipped sovereignty. And that's not negative or disempowering, that's just the proper legal term for it. Okay?
So what about just quickly on because there's also a lot of mix-up with people following the teachings of Shroud and David Wynn Miller and these people who claim to be sovereign.
Okay.
What about that?
David Wynn Miller is a European. He has nothing to do with Moorish science. Moorish science is an ancient practice that is so old. There's a saying that was done by the great elder C. Freeman Hill. He said that we Moors are so old that our mothers do not remember our names. Now that's a proverb to say that that's how old we are and how far back into antiquity that we really go. So if that's the case and that's the reality of the thing, what we have to know is that David Wynn Millers, that all these guys are Johnny-come-latelys. The Roger Elvicks and all these sovereign American citizens have nothing to do with what Noble Drew Ali was talking about. Noble Drew Ali was talking about the Republic in the 1920s, long before David Wynn Miller was born. Our divine and national movement, this is called The Prophet Makes a Plea to the Nation. Our divine and national movement stands for specific grand principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And I, the prophet, am applying to all loyal and faithful Moors, members, and American citizens to help me in my uplifting act of uplifting fallen humanity among the Asiatic nations and race. For I have suffered much severely in the past through misunderstanding of what the movement was dedicated to. That hasn't changed in 2013. The Moors are still confused about what the movement is committed to, because what they're doing is they're mixing and matching it with European sovereignty, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Wow.
We're talking about nationhood, statehood, the revitalization of our empire, the proclamation of the Moors, the plebiscite that needs to be built for the Moorish empire to return. That has absolutely nothing to do with accepting it for value or any of that stuff. All that stuff don't have nothing to do with what we're talking about. Now, we're not saying that that stuff doesn't have any validity. What we're saying is that that stuff is not what the Moorish Science Temple of America is about and or committed to.
So
It is the great God Allah alone that guides the destiny of this divine national movement. I know all American citizens are identified by national descent names. What is your national descent name? We are Moorish Americans. What is our free national name? We are Moorish Americans. We are the Ills and Bays. To answer and apply to the free national constitution of this free national republic of the United States of America. That is why I am calling on all true national citizens to help me morally and financially in my great work I am doing to help this national government. For without a free national name with a descent flag of your forefathers, there is no national title, there's no national divine title of the government in which you live. This is from the true and divine prophet unto all Americans and foreign sympathizers, by the words of the prophet Noble Drew Ali. So the Moors are mixing the windmillers and all of those, that stuff sounds good, but at the end of the day, and there may be some truth to what they're saying. But again, Noble Drew Ali taught us that man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. So you have to separate the actual wheat from the tare. You have to separate what's true from falsehood. Okay? I'm sorry, Morris, I gotta plug in. I thought I was plugged in, but I'm not.
We can hear you.
Next question.
So as far as the Europeans and them having any type of sovereignty, that would only come through them showing allegiance or being naturalized by the Moors.
Yes, the Europeans intrinsically have no sovereign rights. They're subjects of the British Empire. Okay, America itself is a colony of the British Empire. The President of the United States is a direct descendant of the Queen of England, even Barack Obama. And all they've done simply is they haven't shaken off the shackles of King George. What they've done in actuality is taken the family rule of King George and brought it to Americas and brought it to Canada, to Canaanland, and set it up as government, when in actuality what it is an extension of the British Empire. Okay?
Because I know you're familiar with James Traficant and his speech to the House and all that, with the bankrupt United States and
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
right, Congress being sold out to the IMF and all that. So
Yeah, I'm clear. I'm aware of it.
So, in essence, the Moorish Science Temple, or let's say, not even say that, the Moorish Divine and National Movement is the real re-emergence of the Moroccan Empire, and the seats of the temples is really Congress and the government and the DMV and all that we're supposed to be getting back to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's the continuity of that empire. With this structure falling apart, it is the only salvation. It really is. The tenets that it's built on and what it stands for, the principles, as well as our religious and national views, are imperative even for Europeans in this era of time. Because they were made into Negroes, blacks, and colors, even if they don't know it. You know.
So what
The 14th and 15th Amendment made them into Negroes and black and colors.
So what happens to? So if the European is the new Negro black color, then what happens to the Negro black colors of old when the system falls or crashes or whatever?
Well, when a owner returns for his property and he has the receipt, he just takes back what's his, right? So if I come back and I got the receipt and it says, well, hi, I'm Mr. Jackson. How you doing? I'm Mr. Jackson. Here's my ID. And those people over there, those human beings over there, Mr. Jackson, are my table and chair. So I'm going to take them back to where I got them from. I'm going to take them back to the plantation. What I'm saying in essence is that we'll all, if we do not proclaim our nationality and begin to unite ourselves and form plebiscites, become victims of a system that would seek to enslave us. Again, there was a time when we still wore our noble fezzes and sashes, when the Europeans would knock our fezzes off our head when they would see us walking in the street. You understand what I'm saying? We're in a different era of time now, though. We're in an era of time now where all men must, it says, which is a mandate, must proclaim our nationality. That's why we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creeds. These are keys to the kingdom, Moors. Okay? Next question.
That's it for me.
I know you're looking at time. It's after 6 right now.
Okay. If there are no more questions, we're going to pick up with a part 2.
All right.
And the part 2 we're going to deal with is going to get more into what is a state, what is a nation, what is a government, how it's acknowledged, how it exists, how do we reestablish our empire.
Wow.
It'll be part 2, the continuity of this. Let's call it part 2 to this.
Nice.
Okay, so much stuff. If I show y'all how much stuff I didn't even get to, more, I got all of this I was gonna try to put all of this in this little time that I have. Okay, which is impossible. But I'd like to close out with something, if I may, before I close. Is that okay?
Yes, more.
Okay, this is from a book that every leader should have in their library, if you're a Moorish leader. It's called Lex Barbary, A Message to the People. Okay? It's by the late great scholar Tony Martin. And it's just the teachings of Garvey that he taught to the UNIA leadership. It's important. You gotta have this, Moorish. You really do.
In the front of the book, if you look, there's 2 people from here that were in the course.
Say that again, Sheik?
If you look in the front of the book, it shows you the students that were in the, at least piece of that course, and 2 of them are from here.
Ah.
It says it right there too.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
This course is powerful.
Just plug the name of the book again, Mark.
Lex Barbary, A Message to the People, a course in African philosophy.
He says, in time of peace, prepare for war.
Absolutely. Who said that?
Yes.
That's that courage warrior back there talking.
Islam,
Son. I'm going to quote this one thing and I'm going to get out y'all's hair, Morris. Now, Garvey used words that we don't necessarily use in this era of time because it wasn't his job to teach nationality. His job was something else. His job was to point out the forerunner. So he'll use terms like black nationalism and Negro, but we're going to translate those in our minds to Moorish America. Is that okay? Yes or yes?
Yes.
Okay. The culmination of all efforts of the UNIA, when I say UNIA, transform that into the Moorish Science Temple of America, must end in Negro independent, Moorish independent nationalism on the continent of Africa. That is to say, everything must contribute towards the final objective of having a powerful nation for the Negro, translate that to Moor, race. Negro, translate that to Moor. Nationalism is necessary. It is political power and control. No race is free until it has a strong nation of its own system of government, its own order of society. Never give up this idea. Let no one persuade you against it. It is the only protection for your generations and your race. Hold on to your idea of an independent government and a nation, as long as other men have them. Never be satisfied to always live under the government of people, because you will always be at their mercy. Visualize for yourself and your children and generations unborn your own king, emperor, president, your own government, officials and administrators who look like you. God never would have intended to make you look as you look and as you are, and make your kings, presidents, emperors, or rulers of a different race than you are. This must not be a license to disobey the laws of the kings of other races or rulers of races while you live under their control. You must always seek and work for a government absolutely your own, and where you and your children will have a chance like anybody else. In a state, will have a chance like anybody else, to rise from the lowest to the highest position, which you may not attain under that government. While you are under alien governments, get the best of them of the rights of citizenship, but always have in view doing something to make it possible for your own race to have a nation and a government of its own. Speak of this, dream of this, work unceasingly for this, and never forget this. For this is the great work of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Never confuse your ideas of Moorish nationality with that of other people. so as to think that their nationality is good enough for you. Never think that if Japan takes control of the world, it will be better than the Anglo-Saxons or the Latins. Don't think that if the Chinese or the Indians get control of the world, your position will be better. All other races and nations will use you just the same, as slaves and underdogs. Therefore, your only protection is to have your own government. Don't encourage Moors to join Japanese, Chinese, Indian, or other movements which hope to gain greater freedom. They will never get it, because all people want all things for themselves. Explain this thoroughly and sufficiently so as to discourage ignorant Moors or unconscious Moors from thinking otherwise. You should teach the Moors to have pride in their own nationality and teach them not to try to wear garments that typify membership in other nationalities. I was watching TV one time, Moors, and I saw like a whole cluster of Moors at a St. Patrick's Day parade here in Chicago, in Mecca. They had on leprechaun suits and green hats and beads like they were Irish. It is ridiculous, and people laugh at them for doing so. Teach the Moors to look for honor in their own race and from their own nation, and to serve their own race and nation to get such honors. Any honors that they can get from any race for serving their race, they can get from their own for serving their race. Therefore, do not waste time in that. You can have your own king, emperor, pope, duke, your own everything. Therefore, do not bow down to the other races for recognition. When you have honored your own men and women, recognize that honor before the whole world, to let the world know that you honored your own. If the world laughs at you for those you have honored, ask them if they want you to laugh at those that they have honored. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. If they laugh, laugh at them. A white king has no more right to be driven in a golden coach than your king and sovereign. Their pope has no more right to be put on a sacred robe than your pope. Their dukes and nobles have no more right to be dressed up in feathers than your dukes and nobles. Therefore, have pride in yourself and honor yourself. Don't allow other nations to get ahead of you in anything. Follow the idea of the Japanese. Every ship that other races build, the Japanese build one. Every university that other races build to teach men, the Japanese build one. Do the same. Always have your own, because there will never be enough to accommodate you later on. Create your own. I want to skip down a little bit. Always talk of a nation. Always feel that you see the nation. Use the object lessons of other nations to convince your people of the reality of a nation. The sovereign of a people is in the nation. It is the result of a people forming a society of their own to govern themselves and to teach their ends. People with different outlooks and different races never join together except they are subdued. They always find independent expressions and actions. The highest expression of this independence is in the sovereignty of a nation. The flag of a nation is the emblem that signifies the existence of that nation. Have your flag. Islam was?
Islam.
If there aren't any more questions, Moors, I'm going to close. Is that okay?
Chris Moore,
Actually,
Islam, Moors, I love you all with a perfect love, Moors. I hope I did my best to answer your questions, Moors, and to carry us a little bit further than where we've been.
There's
All right, Moors?
there's one quick question, Moore.
Yes.
We'll just ask it. Well, basically,
Okay. One of the Moors just received their warrant of authority
Yeah.
to exercise in their jurisdiction outside of where we are. He just wanted some insight on
What he can and
what he
can't.
can and can't do, and
Well,
what's the. And we explained it, but we told him to ask you since you put us on, etc. You know, so.
Okay, well, give him my number, have him call me, we'll talk about it
All right.
in person
Okay,
as opposed to. That's kind of like
Right,
inside national business, so
All
we'll
right.
talk about it,
That's-
that'll be better.
All right, Moore.
Because I know this video is going to go out across the world. I don't
Yeah.
want everybody to know the secret inside movements and movements.
Islam.
Islam, Moore.
right.
Give thanks.
Islam Moors. Peace out, Moors.
Islam. Give thanks, Moore. We'll show you later.
All right, peace and love.
Peace.
Peace and love. All right.
Just that camera for me.
Maybe only this?
Yeah, just turn that camera.
Like towards you?
Yeah.
You want the light?
Yeah, please.
Where are you
All
standing?
right.
Where are you standing?
So that was National Grand Sheikh Dawiyd Ali El. And we're gonna address, we have about a half hour left, so we're gonna touch on a couple of things just to give a little bit more clarity with regard to nationality and its importance. Now today is El-Hajj Malik El-Shabaz's birthday. And a lot of people are going around calling him Malcolm X, right? Calling him by this slave name that he gave up, right? It's on the record that he gave up the slave name. How many people in here heard of Cassius Clay? Right? Okay, what's his name?
Muhammad Ali.
All right. How come we don't call him Cassius Clay anymore?
You won't let them.
Right? But we go around calling El-Hajj Malcolm X. Right? So there's two quotes that I'm going to read. One quote is by a brother that we did a Skype lecture with, Brother David K. Farrell. Quote, his name was El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. His enemies called him Malcolm X. Remember that while you say happy birthday to his memory. El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, happy Earth Day. Only his enemies called him Malcolm X. Right? And the second quote, Brother Eliza L. in the back. To be honest, if someone changes their name for a reason as serious as Malcolm X changed to Malik El-Shabazz, and everyone ignores it on his birthday and calls him Malcolm X, it's like a spit in the face and a stab in the back. Look how important it was for Muhammad Ali. And this is the same exact situation. This is way more serious than it is being taken. This is why they changed their name, and others are against him for not respecting it. And the reason why he changed his name is because he got a higher degree of knowledge. We all could go back. Now the other thing too, put this on the record. When we speak about the name correction, the name change, right? And him making that statement, and we demand that people call him El-Hajj Malik Shabazz. They say, oh, you guys are negative, why you guys going there, you can't talking like that and all that, right? But when Khalid Muhammad was talking about killing white people, dig them up, everybody's happy or whatever, right? When he started kill the white man, everybody's happy. Nobody's not talking down on him going that route, right? Talking about taking other people's lives or whatever. That never did nothing to him, right? Nobody makes no statements. Everybody's clapping and applauding when it's time to kill the white man. But when we say proclaim your nationality, Moors are, the number one threat, because we're telling people to do what El-Hajj did. We're telling people to do what Mos Def did. We're telling people to do what Sprague Benz did. If you didn't know, Sprague Benz proclaimed his nationality, he's El Bey. If you didn't know, right? Khalid went on, before they assassinated him, came out and said that he's a Moor. That's on YouTube. Well, none of the Black Power people that say they honor Khalid and go down to his grave on his birthday, they're not proclaiming their nationality, right? They're not doing it on paper, much less publicly, right? But how do you distinguish when somebody's serious about their nationality? Their tone changes. How they talk about the situation of our people changes. Just like when we were with Marcus Garvey, right? That course was late. That wasn't something from the beginning. That was something after Marcus Garvey got his studies and went through the protocol of met Noble Drew Ali and all that. Then he started really getting down on nationhood and having respect for nationhood. Not respect for a black nation, not respect for an African nation, but just nation, period. and nationhood, period, right? So when brother, oh yeah, this is from First Old World Order, Brother Aleem El Bey's book. So you can contact Brother Aleem at draleembey.com, I believe. And we're gonna read Malcolm El Hajj or Malik El Shabazz or Omawali, right? Like, they don't even call him that name. Like, even calling him that name is going to show him more honor. And a lot of people don't even know his name's Omawali as well. But they're going to call him Malcolm, a slave name, right? And this is what he had to say on civil rights versus human rights. Right? Remember, tone changes. So think back to all those speeches, the radical, black, you know, etc. And then where he's going now, right? Human rights come before civil rights. You can never get civil rights until you have human rights. Human rights represent the right to be human beings. Whenever you are respected and recognized as a human being, your civil rights are automatic. No, you have to get the recognition of human rights first. This is why people can come here from Africa and Asia and immediately are able to benefit from what the Constitution stands for, because they are recognized as a human being when they touch the shores of North America. But the black people in this country, all of our human characteristics were destroyed by slavery. Our language was destroyed, our history was destroyed, and our culture was destroyed. And when the white man taught us that we were savages in the jungle, living at a subhuman level, and for this reason, when they put the Constitution together, they classified our people as 3/5 of a human being, or 3/5 of a man, which meant subhuman, not a complete human being. And once our human characteristics were completely destroyed, this gave them justification for treating us like we were animals. Then it also justified their selling us from plantation like you sell a horse or a cow or a bag of wheat. Why George Washington himself historically is on record having traded a black man for a keg of molasses, which shows you that he didn't regard that black man as a human being. If the black man's human rights been respected, he never could have been a slave here in America. And if his human rights have been restored by the Emancipation Proclamation, automatically we would have been citizens after the Civil War. So we must be regarded as humans. Our human rights must be respected before we can ever be regarded as citizens and our civil rights respected. Right? So we go back to why George Washington himself historically is on record as having traded a black man for a keg of molasses, which shows you that he didn't regard that black man as a human being, right? Why didn't he regard that black man as a human being? Because he's a black man. There's no such thing as black men and black women and purple men and women and yellow men and women and orange men and women. If you're a human being, you have a nationality. Why is he moving towards human rights? Because at the time, he was making moves to go to the UN. And the UN declarations say that human beings have a right to a nationality. That's in the documentation. That, remember, prior to November and December 2010, the United States and Canada were the only countries not to sign on to that. And now they're signed on now. But just like Grand Sheikh Dawiyd was saying, Noble Drew Ali said that you have to proclaim your nationality. And Noble Drew Ali also said that if the European helped me, why not you? And the European came out with their declaration, 3 of them, the rights of a child, rights of indigenous people, and rights of humans, saying that you have a right to a nationality, echoing the same thing that Noble Drew Ali said in 1913. like echoing the same thing that Noble Drew Ali said in 1913. And it's 2013 right now, and people still think nationality is, no, we don't need that. If they kick the door down, they're still going to take you whether you have nationality or not. That's a lie. Because we had the Skype lecture with ex-military brother, and he said that before they kick the door down and take you in the concentration camp, right, which you're going to research the Canadian concentration camps. Just so you're clear that this is not this is real, right? So claim your nationality, because these people out here, they're not playing around. You just saw that they just killed El Haj's grandson, because he didn't have nationality. He was going around there, going around the world, talking about black people or whatever. Black people, impunity and all that, right? When his grandfather, we just read it, said that it's not about being black, it's about being human beings, right? And he's gonna go and take the Hajj, just like his granddad took the Hajj, and he's gonna, Noble Drew Ali said, don't let these foreign Muslims speak at your rostrum. But he's going to go to Hajj and have some pale Arab tell him, make sure you follow in the footsteps of your grandfather. And his grandfather got shot up.
For changing.
For getting on nationality. Because my name is Kudro Ado El. El is a Moorish title of nobility. His name is Malik El Shabazz. Shabazz, if you read this book right here, Shabazz is a Washita title of nobility. That means Heru.
It's L and then sub.
Right? Yeah. Right? Shabazz isn't some name he got from the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam just trying to claim some stuff that because they're not a nation. So we have to even stop calling them Nation of Islam. Just call them NOI or Black Muslims. Because they're not a nation. And they've been lying to people for years that they're a nation. And people are going down, getting down with them. But if you're a nation, then all those people, you can't be called and tell me you belong to a nation and your name is Malcolm X.
Messed up.
Or 13X. You know, 13X, you belong to a nation?
It's funny, they were once temple number 13.
Yeah.
And then they once were a Moorish Science Temple of America and then changed the name Temple of Islam and then Nation of Islam.
And it's not, and it's not a slight on them. Like, I seen Farrakhan talk about the Moors and the Fez and all that type of stuff, you know what I mean? I have Elijah Muhammad books at home, right? The problem book and the supreme lessons, that's Moorish science. They're not gonna come out and say that, but I know what that's what that is. So it's not like we're bashing,
Right.
but they need to come correct and let the people know what's going on.
Be clear.
Right? Be clear.
Yeah.
Right? It's the age of information now. So why is stuff being hidden? We go deeper, but we keep certain things pristine. But we have a lecture here with a brother speaking on the matters with regard to Farrakhan and whether he knows about this or not. And a lot of these people know. Right? So you're going to research Canadian concentration camps. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor in the United States, the Canadian government passed the Order in Council PC 1486. We're going to go check that out. Order in Council PC 1486. Expanding the power of the Minister of Justice to remove any and all persons from a designated protected zone. This was part of the War Measures Act. I'm going to look that up. War Measures Act. On March 4th, 1942, the BC Security Commission was established and 22,000 Japanese Canadians were given 24 hours to pack before being incarcerated interned and separated from their families. Like the American Assembly Centers, which house internees at Santa Anita and other racetracks, the Japanese Canadians were initially housed in a temporary facility just as demeaning in Vancouver called Hastings Park Racetrack. You know, we have racetrack on the west end.
Woodbine.
Yeah, Woodbine Racetrack.
Lots of land.
So lots of land. So don't even put anything past these people with all this stuff that they have going on right now, and you know, we think that it's for entertainment purposes.
They want to do another one.
They have their stuff set up and already established, and they're just waiting. They're just waiting for the dollar to be zero, and people start panicking out here, right? Men were separated from their families and forced to work on work crews, building roads, railroads, and sugar beet farms. The women and children and older people were sent inland to internment camps, desolate ghost towns and farms made into small cities in the interior of British Columbia at Greenwood, Sandoon, Calso, New Denver, Roseberry, Slocan City, Bay Farm, Popoff, Lemon Creek, and Tashme. Me and some of the other brothers were talking yesterday about how come Hamilton is still around and nothing's not going on there. Nobody can get jobs there, nothing. But Hamilton's just sitting there, right? Just like they're saying, inland internment camps, desolate ghost towns and farms made into small cities. Hamilton.
That place.
Self-supporting camps were established in Lillooet, Bridge River, Minto City, McGivelry Falls, and Christina Lake. 1,161 internees paid for their relocation. The Japanese Canadians were still considered enemy aliens by the government. Similar to the emasculation and impoverishment of the Jews before the roundup to the German concentration camps, these Japanese Canadians had property, businesses, cars, and boats confiscated and sold by the Canadian government before they were forced into labor camps. Without their property, assets, or jobs, they were then charged inequitably for their internment. Harold Hiroshi, a veteran of the Second World War, had 5 acres of Surrey farmland, which was confiscated and sold for $36. He received a check for $15, which included charges for administrative costs in a transaction which he did not approve. He subsequently made several appeals to the government to recover the land, but these failed. Unlike the Japanese Americans, the Japanese Canadians were not allowed to join the military after 1945. In spite of the incarceration, the Japanese Canadians volunteered to serve in the Canadian Armed Forces. In 1945, the Canadian government extended the War Measures Act. So don't forget, you're going to research War Measures Act, right? And you're going to ask yourself, what does the Canadian government have to do with the War Measures Act if that wasn't established here? Which allowed the Mackenzie King government to execute the final solution, which forced these Japanese Canadian citizens to repatriate to Japan. Don't forget, they got bombed. So they're going back to nothing. A country most of the Japanese Canadians had never been before. Or a forced dispersal to Eastern or Midwest Canada. Until 1949, it was illegal for Japanese Canadians to return to Vancouver or Western Canada despite the end of the war. For the Japanese Canadians, there were no homes, farms, and other property left behind before internment. They were forced to start their lives over with no economic resources in an estranged and racially repressive environment of Midwest and Eastern Canada. In 1988, redress for Japanese Canadians was passed, and the Prime Minister issued an apology for the miscarriage of justice that led to internment and incarceration. Yet, the $21,000 of redress money hardly compensates for the lost years of incarceration, property confiscated, family separations and disruptions, and the invisible psychological scars and memories of racial injustices that remain. During World War II, the War Measures Act was used again to intern Canadians. The 26 internment camps were set up across Canada. In 1940, an order in council was passed that defined enemy aliens as all persons of German or Italian racial origin who have become naturalized British subjects since September 1st, 1922. A further order in council outlawed the Communist Party. Estimates suggest that 30,000 individuals were affected by these orders. That is, they were forced to register with the RCMP and to report to them on a monthly basis. The RCMP, so-called law enforcement, were used as Social Security Administration. That sounds like military martial law to me. The government interned approximately 500 Italians, remember the free white people, and over 100 communists. In New Brunswick, 711 Jews, refugees from the Holocaust, were interned at the request of British Prime Minister Winston Churchill because he thought there might be spies in the group. And keep in mind, Jagger, if you never heard that before, that's Japanese nigger. Vinegar.
Jagger, yeah.
Vinegar.
Mick Jagger? No?
Vinegar is a black Vietnamese. Vinegar.
Vinegar?
Yeah, vinegar.
Wow.
A Yigger is a yellow nigger. A tiger is a Thai and a nigger, originating from Tiger Woods' racial heritage. Rice nigger, similar to sand nigger, but for Asians. And a prigger is a prairie nigger. They are called priggers because they resemble America's black population living in the ghettos of the prairies in Canada. Prigger usually means a native Aboriginal in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and 3 prairie provinces. It can also be used to describe Aboriginals from other parts of Canada, but is mainly to the prairie provinces only. And just added that on just to show that Asians in general, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, etc., are your brothers and sisters and not some yellow people. Or are not, see those people as extensions of ourselves because they're niggers too, according to quote unquote the Europeans. That's why they did this thing to them, right? Then that leads to King Alfred plan, the executive order to counteract the minority, blacks, Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites. And blacks also includes all the Asian people, right? And we go to preliminary memo, Department of Defense. This memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. Yes. Right? So he will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries. So they know that we're bound to this continent by heritage, and political asylum would not be available to us anywhere else because we're bound here. And if you're bound here, then, right, just like the Japanese, they're bound in Japan. But they thought that, well, you know, if we say that we're, you know, Japanese Canadians, they're gonna, that we can come over here and we can, no, it doesn't work like that. When you're in somebody else's land that's under occupation by foreigners who subjugated the actual real people that are of this land.
And of this land being North, Central, South America.
Yeah, and the adjoining islands, right? Now, keep in mind King Alfred plan, right? And that King Alfred plan is authorized to counteract the minority, right? So this is Rob Ford. Right? Let's see how Rob Ford feels about y'all. Ford appears to smoke crack in the video. False and defamatory. Lawyer retained by Ford asks how Torstar News Service reporters could verify what someone is doing by video. Well, if he has a crack pipe, more than likely he's smoking crack.
Did you see the lady who came on and who wrote the some column?
No.
She came on bright and bold faced. Yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that was him on the video. She's like, yep. She said a couple
She
more
saw it,
things,
right?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
said she saw it.
She was there.
That's what made her write the column about it. But she was so like cheery faced about it, like not hiding, don't care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? And all these things,
You
all
get
these
the
things
bonus
are,
to talk about Ford.
yeah, you know, all these things are little subtleties, right? To let us know system's about to crash, because all these guys are, like Brother Fonte said, they're losing power all across the planet.
Escape route, man.
They're losing power, and that's how they're getting out. Get themselves in trouble, so they get kicked out of office, and then they could just take the back route and go back to wherever they come from. Because Ford has nothing to do with Canada. You're gonna go back to, if you check the Ford family, whatever nation that is, right? Just like Brother Dawiyd was saying, the Six Nations, you know, the Irish, the Germans, the Brits, right? He's gonna go back to one of those. Also too, all those Six Nations are represented in the white stripes on that flag,
That's right. I read that in one of those books.
right?
The bigger one there.
All the white stripes on that flag represent those Six Nations.
That's right.
That all these people are gonna go back to when the system crashes. And leave us here, you know, stateless, and just hope that we go down with the ship. Right? You got a question? You got a question, Moses?
Yeah, ask.
What are the Six Nations?
Irish, German, British, French,
Portuguese,
Dutch,
Dutch,
and
Scottish.
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 And Scottish.
Remember Portuguese and Spanish, then you can't, especially Portuguese, they're the remnants of the Moriscos.
Right.
They're a Morisco state.
And that's why in King Alfred plan, the minority includes poor whites.
That's why they're in Brazil, same way.
Right?
Here in
But the
Morocco.
poor whites are included
Yeah.
in, you know, the minority. When they think that, you know, they're a superior class or whatever, that, you know, they got nothing to worry about, you know, we can, whatever, but they're gonna get it worse than us.
First time there's the Portuguese king of Brazil was a Moor, like straight across the board. There was no, not even mixed, like it was straight Moor. So it was the first time they had a ruler of Portugal on this side. And they were shown, not even first time, but it's like evidence of the fact that he ruled this side and over there too, but from here. Even after the rise of Spain, and that's why Portugal has its own little domain. And they even do their so-called DNA testing, and they're saying they're like 75% more.
Right? Oh yes,
Small
speaking about
percentage.
DNA testing. You're gonna look up Charles Davenport. In 1898, Charles Davenport became director of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. where he founded the Eugenics Records Office in 1910. Right, keep in line with the timeline.
Yeah.
Right? 1910, Noble Drawley came in 1913. Right?
What's the name again?
Charles Davenport. He began to study human heredity. And much of his effort was later turned to promoting eugenics. His 1911 book, Heredity in Relation to Eugenics, was used as a college textbook for many years. The year after it was published, Davenport was elected to the National Academy of Sciences. Davenport founded the International Federation of Eugenics Organizations in 1925 with Eugene Fisher, Fischer.
International what?
International Federation of Eugenics Organizations. With Eugene Fisher as chairman of the Commission on Bastardization and Miscegenation. 1927. Davenport aspired to found a World Institute for miscegenation, and was working on a world map of the mixed race areas, which he introduced for the first time at a meeting of the IFEO in Munich in 1928. Together with his assistant Morris Stegerda, Davenport attempted to develop a comprehensive quantitative approach to human miscegenation. The results of their research was presented in the book Race Crossing in Jamaica, 1929, which attempted to provide statistical evidence for biological and cultural degradation following interbreeding between white and black populations. Same minority issue.
Same Charles Davenport version?
Yeah. Today it is considered a work of scientific racism and was criticized in its time for drawing conclusions which stretch far beyond and sometimes counter to the data it presented. The entire eugenics movement was criticized for being supposedly based on racist and classist assumptions set out to prove the unfitness of wide selections of the American population, which Davenport and his followers considered degenerate, using methods criticized even by British eugenicists as unscientific. So basically, they were pushing the idea that the minority, Negro, black, colored, were basically born degenerate. And if anything, if child had a baby and she was degenerate, then child's going to be degenerate, so we need to sterilize them and, neuter them immediately so they don't reproduce. But it comes back to the same thing, that has nothing to do with racism. It has to do with these people are stateless people. They want to call themselves adjectives, so you get treated like objects. And that's the bottom line of it. You don't have to go into anything else, go into all the statistics and the big books like this or whatever. And they say it in there, blacks and whites, which comes back to the minority, which comes back to King Alfred plan, which means that these people were actually, kickstarting the whole idea of use our people as guinea pigs to test their whatever it is they wanted to test out. If you want to call it Tuskegee experiments and all that, it's all of it is the same protocol. Same protocol, right?
So is Charles Davenport, is he the same man that married the Moorish queen to study the brains, our brains?
Could be, if it's 18 something, but I don't know. He was born 1830 something or something like that. 1840s or something. But yeah, just check him out. So Ford in this crack video, where is it at? Later in the 90-second video, he is asked about the football team, and he appears to say, though he is mumbling, they are just effing minorities. Right? This is the same football team who, a couple weeks ago, Brother Kojo, the youth man that lived in our area, just got shot up in Malvern. Ford's on TV talking about because he was on my team and I miss him and all that stuff. He's just an effing minority. So he will fall for the tears and the whatever.
Only rich,
right? They're playing the game. They're playing popularity game.
Politics, right?
Politics, right? So again, the objective of us here is get the true information out to our people, because you don't know what the hell's coming down the pipe, right? We have this nonchalant attitude toward nationality when everybody else has one, right? Chinaman has nationality, he can go back to China if he wants to. You don't have to pay no debts or nothing like that. You just go back to China. Get on a plane, go back. All these 6 European nations, all of them, they go back. All these Somalians, Eritreans, Ugandians, all these Africans that come over here pimping the system, they go back home.
Yeah, they are actually protected by the nation. Even when they come here and pimp it, they just gotta go home.
Right?
They have their nationality protects them. That's why they come over here and can do all
And they can do all types of madness.
Man,
But they
and
can
they're
go
still
home.
protected.
And then our people that
Because I've
were
never
born
heard
in
no
this
kind of
land,
news, nothing
No.
about,
Yeah.
oh, he's been caught for this or,
and they do
or
dirt.
saying deported back.
They
You
do
don't ever
dirt.
hear
Because
about
then
how
they'll
they've
turn
been
and say,
hearing
but
about
what
them
are you
from
guys?
such
What
things.
is Canada anyway?
yeah,
They don't want that to come out.
right? And all that is, like Brother D's are saying, that's the secret. Not letting the fraud come out that, they say Canada was founded in 1867, but Canada's been around before that. And Governor General and Queen and those people aren't saying that they're that Canada. They're saying that they're the Canada that was founded in 1867.
Like you could research, I think the brother's name is Marquis de Lafayette.
Yeah,
He was one of the first Europeans who came over here and recognized Canada itself back in like 1774, around the time of the writing of the Constitution.
Right.
He was one of the Europeans that recognized him,
Yeah.
Marquis de Lafayette. He came out of I think it was Amistad. What's that brother's name?
Sinke?
No.
Singbe?
No.
Oh, John Quincyano.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Amistad
Who was
family.
the one of them that says he wasn't amazing.
Yes.
He did go against a lot of their policies.
Yes. But Marquis de Lafayette.
right.
Marquis de Lafayette.
Any questions or comments, anything like that? So we're making we're putting it out there. We have the signs all over. You know what I mean? This is your temple. Use it.
That's what I was gonna make an announcement on.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Like more or less, yeah, he's just like mentioning, this is your temple, use it. What that's saying is, whatever programs that you might have, that you do, say you teach a class, say you do lectures on health or whatnot, when it says this is your temple, use it, like, we mean like use it. Book time in it, like say you want to use it on a Tuesday evening that you have a class that you want to teach. Adisa himself, he uses it like practically every day to teach his classes upstairs. But we could coordinate around certain times that if you want to use it, use it.
Work out something.
Work out something, you could invite your friends here if you want to come here and study, do lectures, whatever. But this is your temple, use it. And that's what we're trying to convey to everybody, use it. A couple of things that's being used for as well right now is on Sundays, Kuja does his lectures. On Saturdays, we started it yesterday, but it didn't go the way we wanted it to go yet, but it's going to be a health class. It's going to be a health class. We just started it yesterday, so we're going to be basically pertaining to everything across the board of that involves health. Also, I said if you want to come here, you want to build with friends, come in here and use the temple. Instead of going to the library, instead of going to Tim Hortons, come here and use it in here, because it's right here. More or less, we also ask for donations, and the donations will go towards keeping the temple going. It will go towards the rent. It will go towards us getting more books, more DVDs, getting more T-shirts and whatnot. But it will go towards the temple. But if all of us use it, we all donate to it, as opposed to donating money somewhere else, you know, like your cell phone bills and all of that. But all of us use it, it will all go toward that, basically. So just use it. That's what, like, it's just, not use it like a dirty rag, just more or less use it. It's yours to use, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, also, I don't want to take up too much time, but second announcement, if, like, I've just been, you know, like, appointed to a governor out in the Mississauga, Brampton area. So I will be out there, and I'm gonna start doing some lectures soon, or having study groups soon. If you know anybody in those areas, have them give me a call. And just so they say, well, I can't come all the way to Toronto. Okay, all right, well, there's somebody in Brampton, Mississauga that could be speaking with you and helping you out. And we get a group going out there as well. All right?
Probably put that info on the website.
Yes.
And people push the website. There's information on there
Yes.
that
Yes.
I know that it takes you years to go through.
Yeah.
So,
But show me how to, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So get my number before you leave and go
Yeah,
from
the
there.
site is canaanlandmoors.webs.com. canaanlandmoors.webs.com. Also too, if you go on the YouTube page, we have classes up there, you know, 200, 300 classes, you know, everything that we do here, we put up
Can you repeat the
on
website,
YouTube.
please?
The website is Canaanland, CANAANLAND, moors.webs.com. And the YouTube page is youtube.com/SUTEKHEL, SUTTEKHEL. Oh yeah, and every Tuesday we stream classes live, and those usually go up on YouTube also. But the stream is ustream.tv/channel
How about the location?
/MHT online Kananta with a C, KANAANTA.
Okay.
And Kananta is the first name of Canada, so you know that.
The location.
And the classes are in Scarborough at 1460 Midland Avenue, Midland and Lawrence. Midland and Lawrence. You know, and again, you know, it's about getting the word out, because, you know, like we're saying, people are gonna be out there calling themselves black. They don't even know King Alfred. Just so we can,
well, encourage.
just to touch quickly the severity of
Speak on it.
King Alfred clan, right?
Sure.
We suggest that vaporization techniques be employed to overcome the production problems inherent in King Alfred. So vaporization techniques is because, like we were talking about in the concentration camps session, that burning people in the oven leaves evidence. So they're not about having any evidence the next time around that they do their mass get rid of people, right? They're about vaporization techniques. And it might be something as easy as, you know, you not even get into the cell at the concentration camp. They just have the big thing right there, just like the scanner. You walk through, you get vaporized. And we could go watch Star Trek and all that stuff, know that they have that technology because there were cell phones, you know, Bluetooth in Star Trek. And they have Bluetooth now. So don't think that, you know, all that stuff is fiction, right? And also, don't forget as well, you might want to sharpen up on your self-defense skills, because it might come down to hand-to-hand combat out here.
That's right.
So upstairs, there's a dojo upstairs, right? I don't say dojo, but I don't want to
Training
just
ground.
touch on it.
Training ground for now, until we further develop it. We can call it what we want. I mean, it's our nation, it's our people. So we just have a training ground upstairs. We have classes 6 days a week. Bless you. So 6 days a week. The schedule's upstairs. Youth, teenagers, males, females. Yeah. So again, that's physical training. Also too, it really helps with your spiritual training. Really helps with your mental training. Martial art is life, and it's just an aspect that, I mean, all the other nations are doing it, and it's benefiting them and their children. So this might be one of the reasons, or one of the things we gotta put back in place. So we've been doing that here. Give thanks for the temple, and you know all the warriors involved in its development and stuff like that. So is this going, and it's flying right now? So we have something going. This is like an example of how you do, when you do things in proper person, your people actually benefit. So I've been like, there's so much red tape that I don't see. I just blaze through because they can't stop it. They can't limit it. They can't tell me or us what to do. So we've been just flying. And everybody's seeing that now, like they're actually seeing it. And they're seeing like, yeah, all right, that's how you do it. So it's just, maybe that's an example that you might want to come check out a couple classes. And for the muftis, which is like the security enforcement for our society, they have mandatory training. All right, so we're gonna get even more up on that, especially for the youth. They have to put in a certain amount of training that they're able to at least have security guard skills, at least what they do, and more. And if they want to take it further, they can go into, you know, becoming a teacher or instructor themselves in the future. They can blend it with whatever science that they do. All right, so this is development that it's going into. So it's ours, and that's because of proclaiming a nationality. Straight up.
Again, we don't want to, you know, beat the dead horse, but Noble Ali made a statement that it takes finance to uplift the nation.
For real.
Right? And we can give finance to Rogers and Bell and YMCA and any and everybody, no questions asked. We just give it up, right, with no questions asked. So whatever it is, right, we have treasure upstairs, that's at the desk. If you haven't given your donation, or if you have a donation you want to give, or if you know somebody who, you know, they might be doing something out there and they need to get rid of some finance, you know, just send it to the temple. Yeah. You know, instead of going out and buying the Benz that you're gonna sell tomorrow, you know, or chop shop or whatever, you know, liquidate that and assist in the movement. Because again, it's you know, we're gonna laugh and stuff, but you know, Boston got an example of what could go down. Yeah, when you see tanks up in the street and all that stuff, soldiers running down the street, like know that stuff is about to kick off. And not that it's about to, like it's happening. So, I mean, it's
If
in
you were a
progress.
Moor, would you be able to walk around in the streets while that's happening?
No.
Yeah, like it's not logical.
No.
Based on you know, why put yourself out there if nobody else is out there. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like,
What are you trying to prove?
yeah, it's like people who say, you know, well, I'm gonna be a Moor, so you know, I'm just gonna jump in the car and drive. Well, maybe you should still put on your seatbelt. You're the only one going through the windshield if you don't put on your seatbelt. You know what I mean? So we have to, you know, and again, it comes down like what we were saying, you know, slow down a little bit. You know what I mean? Because yeah, getting on this information and digesting certain things. You're like, yeah, we could actually do it. No, slow down. Let's not get excited or whatever. Let's slow down. Let's study. We got lots of stuff to study, and this ain't even it. Dawiyd held up the 50 things that he didn't even get to go through.
Gotta start somewhere.
But we gotta start somewhere.
As a qualifying, like, the death touch, but you gotta be responsible with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we know how to do all that stuff, but I mean, it could be our downfall in itself. I think that's the lesson how we got to this point, is responsibility.
Right.
Straight.
Because it is responsibility, that's the biggest thing.
And that's the thing that we haven't done. As a people, we haven't been responsible. We're gonna, it's like we're gonna blame the European that we're racist, but then we're not gonna research far enough to find out that we created them. So if we created them, like, shouldn't we be putting something on ourselves for causing this mess that we're going through on the planet? Just like we were talking about. Before we get violated by them and want to go sue them, sue yourself first for allowing yourself to get violated. Because you obviously did something why you got violated. They're not just going to violate you just because, we're just going to abuse our power and, for violating sakes, right? Like, you did something. Whether the light was out at the back of the thing, you know what I mean, or you were going 51 in a 50, like something is going to make their radar go off to say, okay, you know what, that guy, we got that guy. Stop that guy right there. We did something, and it's about being responsible. That I did it. Then after you be responsible, then you go get them back for whatever it is that they said that they did. Does any more comments or anything? That'll be it. We have
I wanted to know if you, or do you have any brothers or sisters that would do a Skype or a lecture on how to, like for situations for like the CES type business with people taking people's
good one. Actually, yeah.
Is a good one.
That's a reminder. Next week's Skype lecture or audio lecture is going to be with Brother Fonteas L. That's his second lecture that he's doing with us. If you haven't, go watch More versus Police on YouTube.
yes.
And the brother in that is the brother that we're going to be doing the Skype with. And all those questions about, children's services, doing stuff to people's children, taking children, that'll be a good brother to ask. Yeah, it'll be a good brother to ask.
That's big.
And also too, keep in tune for June. In June we have
Nature.
Grand Sheik Nature, Hakeem Bey. Right, we're gonna do the revisit of the Hakeem Bey lecture.
That was last week, right?
Yeah, that was last week, but then we canceled because we're having screen issues and we needed the screen
Oh,
to show
I
pictures and stuff. No, you didn't miss it, so it's coming up.
Okay.
Right, so I think it's the second. It's the so second is Grand Sheik Nature. The 9th is Hakeem Bey. The 16th is Taj Tariq Bey. And the 23rd is Jelani Bey. Right, and all these are, mores that we just deal with on a regular because, we're biased and we don't really stray into listening to all these different people putting, just because you have a fez on, we're not going to listen to you. We stick with the foundation that got us on, and all these people we got connected to Brother Dawiyd, right? So.
And the flyers, there's a lot of flyers upstairs that I'm just seeing,
upstairs,
so be free to take and
be free to take, talk about it, distribute. There's cards upstairs too. Take cards if you want. And I think that's it for today. And then, oh yeah, one more thing, thank you for being here, for taking the initiative to, wanting to learn about, Prophet, what he brought you, and your nationality and your birthrights, because, we know everything else except that. When Al-Hajj was talking about us being 3/5 of a human being, in order for us to be 5/5 or whole, that's what we're missing, the nationality and birthrights. And that was the 2/5 that we're missing of the 3/5 to make us 5/5. And then once we have the national and birthrights, now that we're whole, then now we can go out there and start demanding things of people who, before we demanded things and they, billy club you or tell you no nigger, now we can actually have some power when we talk to people, right? So we're just gonna close out. Our protocol is to do the Moorish American prayer when we close out. You can stand and you can be involved, or you can be silent and hold your peace. What we do, we're also too for the new people. Make sure you pick up Circle 7 Quran, which is nothing to do with Quran. Pray 5 times a day. We don't do that, right? And make sure you pick up the 101 questionnaire that Dawiyd was reading. Those are free. That's just literature that you just have to get when you come into the temple. And then when we do our prayer, this is our holy book. So there's a 7 on there. So we put 5 on the left, 2 on the right, which represents that 7, which represents our chakras and aligning ourselves with the universe. And if we close out, Allah, the Father of the universe,
Allah, the Father of the universe,
Father of love,
Father of love,
truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. By night, and by day, through His holy prophet, Noble Juali, Islam. Peace.
Thanks. Blessings. Give thanks to Grand Sheik. He always works hard. You don't know.
Everyone wanna just rap nowadays. No content, just crap nowadays. Piercing the lips with tats on their face. Cross on foreheads with a kush gaze. Marley's kills more brain cells. Street doors revolve, makes them stay in cells. No service hours, you're doing dead time in a cellar with a fella with parking fines. What's the world coming to? Not to an end, but an end for those that can't comprehend. Those that can't think or use faculties with no nationality with these casualties. King Alfred planned victims take here like the Jews under Hitler, but vapor. No ashes, calling the masses. No suit, no wake, no funeral, no casket. Beat cops with masks, riot gear tell. 84 prophecy of George Orwell. We're living on an animal farm, can't you see it's blatant? Zombies are doctors' patients. Flu shot takers high off a vaccine. So high thinking liquor is Listerine. Then doing dumb shit, mindset warp like wet wood. No cars around but they rep hoods. Rep big gas but babies get clapped. Not the ones sinning, giving back claps. Not reconstructors changing maps. Or fake governments imposing acts. Or the ones